All right, Keith Smith, Pro Basketball Talk, NBC Sports, Yahoo NBA, wrote a great piece that we're going to get into. But first, I want to allow Keith to play the Process Sixers game. Keith, I'm going to ask you a couple of Process Sixer. I'm going to give you a couple of hints. I want to see if you can get these players. Are you game?
Sure, why not? Let's do it.
Right, the Process Sixers. Here we go. A couple guys. I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it, and you can tell me if you can get the player from that hint. Here we go. Starting with this guy. I played basketball for 4 years at Georgetown, but went undrafted. On February 20th, 2014, I was traded to the Sixers along with Earl Clark and 2 future second-round picks in exchange for Spencer Hawes, and averaged a career-high 11.8 points and 7 rebounds per game with the Sixers as their starting center for the 2014-2015 season.
Oh, boy. Henry Sims?
Henry
Wow.
Sims is the answer.
Wow.
You are correct. Now, if you got Henry Sims, these next couple guys are going to be walks in the park.
No cheating over there, Keith.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
I'm standing on my porch, so
Yep.
no cheating happening here.
All right, and by the way, I did not tell Keith ahead of time that he was playing this game. He had no knowledge. And he doesn't have my rundown sheet like you two. All right. I was a consensus All-American at the University of Kansas and drafted 5th overall in the 2012 draft as the Big 12 Conference Player of the Year. I averaged 8.8 points and 7.7 rebounds in my 22-game Sixer career during the 2014-2015 season.
Boy, was he, you said from Kansas?
He was the 5th overall pick in the draft out of Kansas by the Sacramento Kings.
By the Sacramento, I'm going to say Thomas Robinson.
Thomas
Wow.
Robinson is correct. We did have a guess of, I can't give that guess up yet because his name is coming up here soon, but it was the worst guess in the history of this game, Keith Smith. All right. This one's probably the easiest, maybe the easiest. I played college basketball for the Syracuse Orange and was selected as the 39th overall pick by the Sixers in 2014. I was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Ersan Ilyasova and a protected pick.
Oh, boy. Let's see. From Syracuse.
Still in the league.
Still in the league.
He's a process Sixer who's not only in the league, I think he's in a rotation.
I want to say Jakar Sampson, but that's not right. He played for St. John.
That's right. He did play for
I don't know.
Wow.
I'm not sure.
Wow. You don't know
Jeremy
this one.
Grant.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
All right.
Oh, man.
We got 2 more process Sixers for you. I played college basketball at Clemson. I was selected by the Sixers with the 32nd pick in the 2014 draft. I was traded to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Isaiah Cannon and a 2015 second-round pick. In my 52 games for the Sixers, I averaged 9.2 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks in 25 minutes per game. I also refused to sign Sam Hinkie's 4-year deals.
KJ McDaniels.
There you go. KJ McDaniels. Now, that was not a clue that I gave everybody else. But
Yeah, that was an added clue there at the end.
that was an added clue. That he refused to sign the Sam Hinkie deal. All right, last one. This one I think you'll get too, Keith. You've been pretty good at this game. I played college basketball for the Washington Huskies, where I was a first-team All-Conference and Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, and I was drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies with the 25th pick. Tony Roten is correct. So there you go. All right, good job, Keith Smith. The only one you didn't get is the one guy who's still playing, Jeremy Grant.
Man, that one tripped me up, too.
Yeah, Syracuse. There was another hint in there, but if I gave that hint, you would have really got it, that his father played and his uncle played, and he had 2 brothers.
Oh, yeah, I would have got that one for sure. Yeah,
a little easy. All right, let's get into some hoop stuff. You wrote at Pro Basketball Talk, it's a great article. It's something we've talked a lot about, is that if the NBA pushes their season back to a mid-December start, it sounds great and all, but there are some big hurdles that stand in their way here, and particularly this year, it could be the baseball season.
Yeah, absolutely. There are 22 NBA teams that share a regional sports network. So for the Sixers, that would be NBC Sports Philadelphia with a Major League Baseball team, which is the Philadelphia Phillies. So that is something that's going to have to be worked around. When in a normal year, that happens for about 2 to 3 weeks, kind of depending on when opening day of baseball is. If it's like this year, it's supposed to be towards the tail end of March, you get about a 3-week overlap. If it's in a normal year where it's towards the beginning part of April, you may be looking at only 2 weeks. And you can get that by alternate channels, or sometimes these more usually the baseball team has a second local channel, like an over-the-air channel that is that you can put the game. And that's what you'll see. You also have early in the baseball season so many days that it's not always a conflict there, because they're usually over by the time the basketball game is going to start. But if you start pushing into June, July, and then August, you're running into some trouble, because now you're talking half of the baseball season overlapping with the basketball season, and you're putting these RSNs who pay a lot of money for these rights to both MLB and NBA in a tough position to choose.
Yeah, now, I know here locally, and I don't know if that you had this research when you did the article, we have NBC Philadelphia and NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus. It's essentially just like a second, if the Flyers and Sixers play on the same night, one goes to Plus, the other one goes here. So maybe Philadelphia wouldn't have as big of an issue, although if hockey got involved, now you'd have 3 teams in the mix. But are there other teams that have that Plus option, or do most of them play on just the one regional sports network?
Yeah, most seem to have some alternate channel. What is highly dependent, though, is if your cable provider offers that alternate channel. Not all of them do. Some only offer the one main channel. One of the things that I learned doing some research in this is even on a provider like DirecTV, you don't necessarily get all the alternate channels for every one of these regional areas. Sometimes it's only one. In some cases, Fox Sports South or Fox Sports Southeast, they're the primary broadcaster for the Atlanta Braves, which we all know has the big giant following across most of the South, because for so many years they were the only team in the South, and you had them on TBS like when I was growing up as a kid. But they overlap with obviously the Atlanta Hawks, but also the Memphis Grizzlies and the Charlotte Hornets in viewing areas. So that is, teams that are all there. So the basketball one sorts itself out, because they limit it to Memphis gets the Memphis games and the like there. But now you're adding in the Braves. And like you said, if you add in the hockey team as well as a handful of these teams are also the provider for the MLS games, which is, again, another thing that gets worked around fairly easy. But you start adding in 3-4 things to come up with, that gets really tricky, and something that's going to have to be worked around.
How do you see these professional sports leagues working together if they are forced to figure out how to coexist at the same time in the fall?
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think they're all going to say, hey, we're in it for ourselves, and they're going to what they'll do is they'll make the RSN figure it out. And what I've seen with some of these, as well as I researched the pieces, is some of the RSNs have specific contract language with the team how often their games can be moved to the alternate channel, because nobody wants to tune into, channel 600 is my channel that I watch all my games on, and now tonight it's not there. Even if it's only 601, nobody wants to do that, because what you run the risk of is, right, we know a lot of people, they're fans of all the professional team. While I'm on that channel, I'll just watch that game tonight. Or, they're playing this team, it kind of stinks, I'll watch this one. They want it to be easy to find. So one of the things that I learned through researching this piece is some of these channels they can only move them, 5-6 times a year to an alternate channel versus there. So I think what you're going to do is you're going to see these teams put them really in a bind to say, you got to figure this out. Now, the important thing is moving the schedule. That's not going to – this year, let's take this year out of the mix, because this year is completely different. We'll see if they can resume this season or if it impacts into the 2021 season. But in a normal type environment where we're not dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, what you're going to see is it's going to take years before this happens, because it's not going to happen to shift the entire calendar back without either until we're in a new CBA with the NBA, or there's a big round of negotiation outside of the CBA timeline that happens, because you're not going to want to see, a lot of the players are starting to come out and say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play in the summertime. I don't want to have that. Then you have all the TV deals and those things to be worked out. So there's a lot of questions going on there.
What's the biggest impact for each team and the organizations for the logistics that are going to dramatically shift here potentially for the next season? Like, what's the biggest issue that stands out?
Right now, well, beyond let's it's clearly the health concerns. But let's move beyond that. If we are cleared to kind of go back, then what you're looking at is there are two things come to mind. First is arena availability and being able to figure that out. You've got a lot of that happening where you've got arenas booked for other events. Sometimes that's I know Milwaukee is running into potentially I believe it's the Democratic National Convention is there, and that's tricky. You're going to be fighting with the hockey team for dates. In some cases, for example, in Boston, the hockey team owns the arena, so they are the ones who are going to get first pick of any of the dates. So you're going to have to really work that out. The second piece is if we come back to play, what you're really looking at is how quickly does this happen? And that's something that the teams and their trainers are concerned about. My partner over at NBC Sports, Kurt Heelan, is putting up a piece. It may have gone up already, but if not, it'll go up soon, about how concerned these teams are about players coming back too quickly and being pushed right into playing right away. And they worry about that for injuries, especially soft tissue injuries and the like, because these guys are not going to have their normal ramp up. Because although they've been able to condition and do some things, the vast majority of NBA players are not in shape to play a basketball game after we've now been down for 2 weeks, and we'll be down for at least 6 weeks at the very earliest before anything could happen. And it's probably going to be even longer than that.
Talking to Keith Smith, Pro Basketball Talk, and there was a report yesterday in the New York Post. It was at least confirmed here locally by the mayor of Atlantic City. He did confirm that they are trying to get the NBA to play here. So Atlantic City is definitely trying. But how do you see something like that working, using like a bubble city? Do you think there would be, because there's some sites that are rumored as Vegas, Orlando, Hawaii, Atlantic City, Louisville, Kentucky, maybe one or two others. But do you see just one city being picked, or that there would be like 4 or 5 of these cities and there would be a bunch of games in these locations?
Yeah, I can tell you that is definitely on the table, the single site environment. Now, what it would look like as far as games, that's all, up in the air to be determined. But that is something that they're talking about. But the one thing that the league has said is it has to be somewhere where you can truly make it a closed environment. And you need access to hotels as well as to house the players and the training staffs and, the whole basketball operations group. And you need a place where you can have basketball facilities. And they ideally don't want it turning into a bunch of converted facilities. And teams are, they're going to make this work if that's what need be. But teams really want to say, hey, this is kind of our space. We can bring in our equipment, because as we've seen over the years, what happens with these teams is their medical and training staffs, they have different beliefs, and they have equipment where we believe in this one, exercise or this one piece of equipment is really what we use and train our guys on, versus another team's like, that's all garbage. We don't do that. We use this. So that's going to be something where you're going to want to see how that works out as well. So for that reason, that's why I've been told a lot of places are off the table, because you can't create that truly closed environment with all the facilities you need. I was told one place that is heavily under consideration is Orlando, but really instead of being where the Magic play, downtown Orlando, is potentially using Disney, because Disney has the hotel rooms. They're a private property that can make it a closed environment, and they have the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex, which has the ability to house, 50 basketball courts if need be at any given time, as well as space to make weight rooms and all that. So that's something that you're looking at. So we'll see. The other option is doing a handful of cities, like you mentioned, which could happen, and where we could see that. And one of the things I've heard there is more of a regional approach, where you would take all the Northeast teams are going to be clustered in this one place in the Northeast. They'll play kind of a preseason against each other, where that's kind of what we use to get back up to speed. And then when the playoffs happen, we'll figure out what that's going to look like. And, maybe then everybody moves to another location there. But no matter what, these have to be closed environments, because you just can't risk the minute one person comes down sick, you're going to have to shut the whole thing back down again.
And the possibility, I guess, of a single elimination tournament, that has been all but ruled out?
Yeah, I was told after that our report came out of the New York Post. I asked, and I said, is that true? And I've been told both from the team side and from someone within the league itself that's completely off the table. They have too much belief in the integrity of their playoff system, where they don't want that single elimination in there, because it's going to create a result that no one's really going to ultimately be happy with. And the last thing they want to do is put out there any kind of championship that has an asterisk next to it, because folks are saying like, they won, but it's because they got hot for a few weeks like a March Madness team, versus they really worked and won this title.
Yeah, and then I guess we're talking with Keith Smith, Pro Basketball Talk, Yahoo, NBA. I guess it's a little, I don't want to say discouraging, but it sounded like a guy like Mark Cuban, who was like, hey, I think we can return mid-May. He kind of backed off a little bit of that today. So I guess the idea that the NBA is going to be back and running sometime like early June sounds to be a little far-fetched now.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any way. When you have things like Wimbledon now canceled, and that's in late June into July. You had the mayor in Toronto basically shut the whole city down. And then I know they came out and said this only applies to city, permits, not sporting events. But no league's going to come in and say, hey, we can host our thing when the rest of the city is closed. That's not going to happen. So, it's going to be tough. And what we've continually heard is just like no one wanted to be the last ones to shut their league down, no one wants to be the first ones to jump back in. And everybody's going to wait until they can say, hey, we're sure that we can keep at a minimum our players completely safe. So I would be surprised. And then what you're running into is if you can't get up and running by June or July, you really have to start to question, is this even worth it? Or do you take an NFL type approach where you say, you know what, let's blow out our draft and off season. And that's what a lot of fans love anyway. Let's make that a big show. That'll get us through for a few weeks, and then we can slide back in, because you don't want to start cutting too much out of next year unless you really have to.
All right, good stuff. And by the way, Keith did a great job on the process quiz. He got 4 out of 5. And we'll play along for the rest of the week here. Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Keith Smith, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, Keith.
That one I missed is going to hang with me for a while. I'm bummed.
Jeremy Grant, come on. He's a process all-star.
That was brutal. That was a bad miss by me.
Right,
you guys stay safe.
See you, man. All right, Frank Close, Keith Smith, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.